Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ. My goal to meet every single person on the planet. Well, it's one shorter after today. Alicia Hauff is our guest. We're going to talk about creating, being an artist, being a nurse practitioner, and even a little bit about Candyland at one point. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Welcome to JJ Meets World, Alicia Hauff. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So you're an artist.
Yes.
Do you ever find that that's too broad of a term sometimes, that people are like, well, yeah, there's a lot of different types of art. Are you a visual artist?
Yes.
Are you mixed media? Are you like Prince, like the artist formerly known as? I feel like artist is just this really big umbrella.
Prince? Answer that first. Are you Prince?
No, I can never be Prince.
Yeah. Okay. See, we got that taken care of right off the bat. But like, what kind of artist are you, Alicia?
Yeah. So I've been an artist since I was young. I mean, I think all kids are creative, and it just is a matter of nurturing for the most part. So I'm a mixed media artist, visual artist. So I work 2D. I don't do sculptures. I don't think I'll ever get to that, but you never know. And I'm constantly looking into other ways to express myself in different media. That's the beauty of mixed media, is everything is on the table. It's a total mess. Like, it's free game. You know, I'm just inspired by the materials that I use.
Okay, so when someone says mixed media,
yeah,
we're not talking about, like two records and you're just blending those things together like a DJ. I mean, what
that's audio media. Yeah.
I mean, is it literally like, oh, here's a chunk of newspaper, I can see something I can do with that.
Yeah,
and then it's, here's a piece of plywood.
Yes. Just about anything goes. So it matters what you're putting all of this media on. So I use like wood panels, like a aqua board, it's called. That's kind of like a treated panel, and most of the time it's canvas. Super expensive there for a while, huh? Yes. Sometimes there's deals, so I keep an eye out for those.
So you're like, I'll buy 60 of these right now.
Exactly. But all the media, I mean, it can be papers, of course, paint, texture media. They make anything and everything as far as for professional art. But I've made art using wire and pieces of wood from our garage, paper towel, and it turned out really cool.
Neat.
So, yeah. Or I know people use found objects sometimes. So
I'm going to use the door from this microwave oven.
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued too, because you clearly can see something that everyone else can't see, right? You see that chunk of wire and that little piece of wood, and you're like, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I know these two things belong together.
Yes, I see possibilities.
Ooh,
I see possibilities.
I mean, you should trademark that quick, because it sounds like this type of thing like a bank is going to use as a slogan. It's probably going
to come up in my branding, yes, which I'm still working on.
Yeah. Well, and so you've been an artist for a long time, but you've been a full-time artist for, a short amount of time in the grand scheme of the universe.
Yes.
And you were a nurse beforehand?
Nurse practitioner. Yep.
Okay, so I mean, they're a little bit different. Like, unless you're collecting people's blood to do like an artwork piece and it was a long con. I mean, how do you go
like
from
Modern Man?
Like Modern Man, right? Do you remember when he did that with the blood? That was pretty weird.
I'm good. Yeah.
Do you remember what took you from being a nurse practitioner, which you went to school for and you clearly worked
invested a lot of time and money, and that's kind of the whole story, right? So I was working downtown at Family Healthcare, shout out to them.
Whoop, whoop.
Yep. Whoop, whoop. Working in the homeless health clinic and then doing 2 afternoons a week at Cass County Jail. So medical outreach there. I loved it. It was very challenging and rewarding. But over time, it just seemed to get harder and not easier. There are a million reasons for that. It's very multifaceted, and it has to do with, for sure, the healthcare system. It's really a crapshoot. It needs to be totally revamped, and we talk about it, but I'm so interested in how that can be done, and I tried to do what I could in my little corner of the world, right? Just over time, with the pandemic starting, the moral injury just kind of compounded. So I was already working with highly vulnerable people who couldn't get the care that they need. So barriers to access, a ton of trauma, so much trauma all the time. And that was compounded, and that affected their ability to access what they needed. And I just think that, we don't value housing as a real human right, like nationally across the board yet. And that would be huge. We don't invest in those priorities necessarily.
No, I
among
feel
others, yeah.
I feel like so much of our healthcare system, especially for those let's say in the prison system,
Mm-hmm.
it's very reactionary.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're waiting until somebody is suffering from seizures to figure out, we should have been treating something a lot earlier.
Right. Yeah. And just because somebody, we think should go into, get medical care, it doesn't mean that they will or that they want to. And a lot of our health doesn't even have to do with the whole healthcare system. So that's where all those social determinants of health come into play, where you live, where you work, how you were brought up, your education level. I mean, all of those things too need to be accounted for. So fast forward 8 years into that career, a lot of, vicarious trauma, just a lot of heartache, a ton of heartache. I'm an empathetic person. I can't help but feel for all of these people so much. And I just got angrier and angrier, walking to work. I was like, I'm angry. It's 8 a.m. And I would share this with my husband and, kind of describing, just the various things that went on in my day. And there were some wins among a lot of losses, it was feeling like. And I know that I needed to kind of adjust my expectations over time, but it just got to a point where the moral injury was overpowering. I burned out. I hit a wall. I could not physically, emotionally, psychologically do the work anymore. And then top that all off with some kind of guilt for even thinking about leaving that work or this work that I invested so much time in and a lot of heart. I really thought I'd be doing it longer, but the funny thing is we kind of get tied to these timelines in our head. Like I thought, I want to do art, but I'll wait until my kids are out of the house or even retired. Why did I wait that long?
Isn't it weird that we take things that clearly bring us joy and satisfaction, like creation just in general like that?
Yep.
And we're like, this is a hobby.
Yes.
This isn't real. This is just something I do that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And I don't deserve to feel good and have a career because that's why they call it work and not play.
Exactly. So I had to really deal with my own internalized, kind of conditioning surrounding art and the value of art and the community. And there was a lot of that. So I was done in the clinic late September last fall, and I was sick. I was just physically sick. I think my body also hit that wall. So I really had to take some time out to just chill and kind of come back to myself. I had to heal.
Yeah.
I had a ton of healing to do, and I'm still working on it. But, it's kind of that wounded healer archetype maybe, but, I just got to a point where I don't want to be on a pedestal. I love you all, but somebody else can come in and do just as great of a job. I was not the job. I was not the title. It's me, trying to make a difference and do what I could for the people around me.
Well, even the most empathetic person is not built to deal with that level of trauma every single day and to feel that level, that lack of support from those in our society who we should be getting that support from.
Yes.
And so, I mean, at some point, you do have to go, I've given what I have. I don't actually have anymore. And it can be hard for someone like me to not easily put my mindset in the mind frame of a nurse who they are the front lines of healthcare in the country. They are the people who are every day clocking in, clocking
backbone.
out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just no question about that.
Yeah.
So when I get sick or when someone in my life is ill, and so illness or trauma or whatever is visiting us in that moment, at some point that finalizes in some way, and then we kind of go back to our lives, versus nurses who are showing up every day going, even if this person had a great result today, like you said, tomorrow there's a different person coming in right after them, and it's not going to be so great. And the things that you'll be seeing will not be showing up in episodes of hospital dramas.
Exactly.
It's far worse.
Those are so inaccurate anyway.
If they showed those stories, I'm sure people would go, that can't be real. That would have never happened. It's like, it actually did. Yeah. A couple of my friends are nurses, and so I hear about this from their perspective as well.
Sure.
So when it came to like the height of COVID, okay. So, and listen to all of the sanitary engineers who are listening to this, please continue to pick up the garbage at my house. But there was this moment where
demographic of garbage men, yes.
But I mean, there was this big swell of people who got angry that they were not being called essential workers. And they're like, I put my life in my hands every day when I go to pick up the recycling that is being put. Now, given I need someone to come and pick up the refuse from in front of my house. Like, I need those government agencies and staples to continue. Like, I don't get Netflix through the mail anymore, so I probably would have been fine without the mail for a little bit. But like, to some extent, there was this moment where like everyone wanted to be called an essential worker.
Sure.
And I understand that we all want to think that we're doing our best, but let's talk about who actually was an essential worker, like someone like yourself, because as 90% of the world started working from home or staying home during this time, that's not an option for you, right? Like, you need to still go to the place where you can service the person.
So it's funny it was for 3 months. I think it was from March through June of 2020. They actually had all of us providers go home. Like they had us work from home.
Wow.
So we hurried up to figure out, telehealth for family healthcare. That was a whirlwind. It was challenging because, if one person is late or they don't pick up the phone, and then you're moving on to the next one, and then the other one calls back. And so there was a lot of screen time and a lot of sitting. And so I'd do laps in my bedroom, and it was...
So that's also anxiety inducing, right? Of like, come on, please.
The biggest thing was I can't see or listen to this person right now. Like, I can't lay my hand, the hands on, I'd have to just, it was basically triaging a lot of it, unless it was mental health, then, we kind of talk through it anyway, but, body language also, so that was very hard. So that was morally injurious. Like, I am doing the best I can, but, I can't see you right now. I'm just talking to you on the phone. This doesn't feel right.
Sure.
So when we did go back to the clinic in June, we wore all the gear, and that sucked as well. But at least we were, seeing people in the clinic again, and it was just one thing after another.
I'm burned out, like, just talking about it.
It sounds exhausting.
It does. It makes me. It's not the kind of exhaustion where it's like I'm sleepy right now. It's the kind of exhaustion where I'm like, oh my god, the
mental fatigue and just gymnastics every day. I know. I came home fried like all the time.
Right.
Yep.
And then at that point, did you feel it taking a toll, like on your personal life, like with your family?
For sure. Yeah. So I have 3 boys, 11, 7, and 5, and they keep me super busy.
Well, yeah.
So it was hard to come home just drained, and then for somebody else to need more from me. So then there was that like guilt. It's just like layers of fatigue and guilt, and I try to live a pretty healthy lifestyle, like do the things to take care of yourself too, exercising and trying to eat well and get your sleep, not stay up too late and watch Stranger Things. And
Right. I mean, but this last season
not
was
all the
so
time.
good.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, but a strong core isn't always that valuable when you're super tired and depressed and traumatized.
Just the scales were really getting out of balance for sure.
So tell me about the conversation where, you and your husband are discussing like,
Yep.
so this is going to happen.
Yep. So I come home and I kind of venting, and my husband Matthew is like, in so many words, I can see that you're having a tough time. Have you thought about quitting your job and I can build you or find you some studio space? And I was like shocked. I looked at him and said, really? Like that would be okay? Really? Like I was like needing permission to do that type of thing, to go for a dream that I've had all my life, and knowing that art has been my jam all my life. And I just needed the time to like put into it. And I knew that I would grow, a business or just grow this hobby into a business if I had the time. But all the guilt, there was a lot of crying in my bathroom, in my bathtub, a lot of, tears.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's not like you said, I'm going to quit this and go into accounting.
Right.
Where you kind of know what the tunnel looks like, right?
Yep.
You're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to use a computer and I'm going to do this. And these are the expectations versus I'm going to bet it all on myself and this inner push to create something.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah. That's daunting. It's real tough. And
But-
Tucker and I have come from that creative side of things too. And sometimes trusting that is a little rough.
It's a big leap.
A rough go.
It's a big leap. Yeah. But I really felt like that wall wasn't going anywhere. So I had to take a turn. I was kind of like forced into it in so many words. I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. So once I did put in my notice and whatnot, I definitely sat with how burnt out I was. And I, got through the last few weeks there and I appreciated all the well wishes and actually, so much support. People are, coworkers saying, I'm so proud of you for doing this, for like taking care of yourself and going for your dream and what you've always wanted to do. And so that was encouraging, very encouraging.
And clearly you'd already been doing, it's not like all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do this. And I've never done any of it before,
exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So it's something that had already taken your passion.
Yes.
And so it's just like, all right, we're going to multiply it now.
Yep.
We're going to build that studio space, like you said, like your husband said, and go from there. So what does your studio look like? Yeah.
So it was a crappy storage room in my husband's office building. It's down along 52nd and Veterans kind of. So it's got to be like 20 feet by 12 feet, kind of a rectangle. So he put in new flooring, new like these white wood walls in there, like paneling, and then some like a cute shelf to put my art up on. And,
Sure.
And it's got a north-facing window. It's very bright, very cheery. I have about 5 plants in there so far, and a ton of stuff, a ton of media.
Names at all? Like, do you name your plants?
No, but I talk to them.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
At least you have a conversation.
Yes,
It's like
definitely.
me at my office when I'm like, I don't remember that guy from sales. Like, hey, dude, how's it going, buddy? Okay, so I was on your website today.
Yeah.
And you've got a blog section of it. And I was
Yes.
reading through some of your blogs.
Sure, great.
And one of them provided me some context that I've needed for a long time, which is
That's encouraging.
I have been looking to commission some artwork. My dream holiday gift to my family is to get an artist interpretation of what their house looks like.
Interesting.
So, essentially I feel like I would take the photo of my in-laws and my sister-in-law and then provide them to an artist and say, this is your jumping off point.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And in one of the things in that blog was, manage expectations and be specific about what you want. And can specific be, I want you to just do whatever comes to mind, or is that too vague?
That might be a little too vague, but you're talking to me. I'm
Right.
one of like how many artists out there. So I think every artist has their preferences and kind of their process. That's a big word, is process. The creative process. So for me, that I would need a little bit, I'd be asking some more questions.
Right. Like this house cooks a lot of rice. Like they use their rice steamer every single day. Well, that's not the specific
Sure.
we're really looking for. Do you get a lot of like commissioned pieces?
I'm steady with them, not a lot, but that's okay. You know, I'm still definitely pacing myself. You know, I can't probably, I'd be overwhelmed with an explosion of things, but I'm definitely open for more work. Yes.
Do people bring you into a space and be like, this wall here needs something on it?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
I've done that.
That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. So again, I see possibilities. And then they tell me about, you know, colors or a color palette they have in mind. You know, definitely the type of media, like I do watercolor and acrylic, abstract, you know. I've done realism. I actually did realism, you know, growing up. I did. You know, I drew portraits. I just did a cockatoo mixed media thing for my mother-in-law. She loves it.
Oh, nice. Shout out to your mother-in-law
Yeah,
and her love of cockatoos.
Exactly. I love odd animals, so they might pop up every now and then. But yeah, I prefer abstract. It's a lot more open to interpretation, and there's so much more freedom there.
Are you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
for your process, is it something where, I mean, or maybe it's a mixture of both, but between having an idea before getting into the studio going, oh, I have an idea, this is what I think I'm going to try to do, or is it more of a process where you're discovering it in the moment when you're in the studio?
That's a great question, and it's some of both.
Okay.
I sometimes have an idea, like the most recent series I did was like a desert botanical series. It's hanging up at Atomic right now. So I grew up until I was 6 in the Southwest, so Mesa, Arizona. So I feel like that desert and that heat, I love the heat, just not the humidity. I'm fanning my shirt here. So that has kind of always stuck with me. I've traveled back there several times. So I thought, how could I bring that into my work? So that was translated with the colors I used, and how I used the different media. And then the image transfers that I learned how to do. So how to take a drawing of a botanical motif, and then how do I put that on the canvas?
Are there artists that like, you're like, yeah, this is my jam. This is somebody else that I like what they're doing. Anybody come to mind for you?
Yes. Like
Yeah?
who inspires me?
Yeah.
Yes. Her name is Jennifer Daly. She's an artist out of California. I found her on Pinterest and saw one of her paintings, and I'm like, yes, this is sparking me alive right now. So that's always a sign, like, okay, this is something I need to investigate. This is something I need to follow.
We're in an
So-
interesting time where like someone who would consider themselves like a local artist, right?
Yeah.
Now you can be at anyone's fingertips thanks to the internet,
Yes.
thanks to
Yes.
Pinterest, thanks to
Right.
TikTok. Gone are the days of where you have to hope someone stops into the like small gallery that
storefront,
you're
yep.
in
At the street
in New
fair.
Mexico. Yeah. My wife has a cousin from Delaware, and she was the artist of her family, very egg heavy family, and she's the artist. And Jill bought a print that she had done with just these weird shaped people, and I'm like, this is friggin' awesome. I love this. And she bought another piece, and then recently she bought a piece, and she's like, I don't want her to know that it's coming for us, because I don't want her to like feel like, oh, I got to do something that's going to fit for whatever, you know, Pete and Claudia are going to have. And she ended up getting just this wild, it's canvas, but not stretched on a frame. So
Okay.
just like free flowing,
Mhm.
which caused a whole other issue of like, how are we going to put this thing on the wall?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Eventually we just got 2 pieces of like glass and then the like binders for those.
Yes. Okay.
And then hung
Yep.
that, and which makes it look very artsy, like very like,
They're modern.
oh yeah, right,
Mhm.
exactly. But we didn't tape it, so it started to slide. So then we had to undo the whole thing and then get it back where it needs to be. Mistakes that will not be made again. But I remember thinking like, this is so cool that she can do that. And the only reason we know about it is because she shared her Pinterest page at one point. And I said, I'm related to her. And I had no idea she was creating this stuff and making it available for people to purchase. And I love, to me, there's nothing better than supporting a local artist.
Well, yes.
And right, exactly. And that was another one of the blogs that, it's in that like commission, like, well, why does this cost this much?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not just time that you put into making it. There's materials, there's overhead. You've got a studio space that you need to do.
Rent to pay. Yep.
I consider like what you're doing a 24/7 job, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever you do that inspires you to create this thing, it's not like you only go there. You're not Stephen King, right? Stephen King only writes from like 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and makes bestsellers. But other than that, he's not walking around the street kicking a tin can, being like the tin can monster. That sounds great. But you are looking around and things that you remind you. If you go and you watch the 4th of July fireworks, maybe that comes into your work, the next week or something like that.
Exactly. So I'm a member of, it's called the Art to Life Academy. So I took a 12-week course with them. They're based out of California also. But it was kind of like art school, but that much better. And it was condensed into 12 weeks. So it really showed me how to make art that's authentically me, and how my experiences, my skills, and everything can come into my art, make it authentic. But yeah, this academy, the reason it's called Art to Life is because your life informs your art, and then your art practice kind of starts to inform your life and how you live that. Like the closer you get to being aligned with your own creativity, and kind of going down that path, like it starts to kind of change how you approach your life, like looking for differences and contrasts and textures and colors and different ways of doing things. So it's really cool.
When I do an improv show, I always make a note of things when I'm walking into a space. So, for example, I can tell a lot about a crowd by what they do with their coats. So if it's the middle of December, So middle of December, if I walk into a place and everyone's coat is on the back of their chair, but there is a place to hang up their coats, like, okay, these people are going to be way more reserved because they don't trust that the coat room won't damage or lose their coats.
They're also ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
get out of here.
100%. They're all going to do the Irish goodbye,
strategy.
right?
Yeah.
That same group on the flip side who all hang up their coats makes me think, okay, so there's a couple of options here. Are they followers? Did Brenda, the coolest person in the office, come in and she immediately hung up her coat and they're like, quick, grab your coats. We're going to hang them up because Brenda hung up her coat. There, that's cool. Do they feel really comfortable in this space?
Yeah.
Is another option.
Yep.
And so just by looking for those weird little things, you can tell a lot about, who I'm about to perform for, who I'm going to create, a performance art for.
Right.
In that respect. And so if someone comes in and they're talking to you and they're like, I need a painting and I need it to be on the wall of my bank and I need it to make me look like I'm cool and collected. That person clearly wants just like a picture of a vault, right? Like you're like, yep, I'm going to make you a vault door and it's going to be really cool and you're going to love it. They're going to put up there like, this is perfect. Versus if, you had done a piece that's like, oh, it's an interpretation of what modern, fiscal responsibility is. And he's like, I don't get this. But I'm going to put it up on the wall because I paid for it and I want to appreciate it. I'll get it one day. Is it when someone comes in and they look at your stuff and they refuse to take the time or they have the inability to see anything, they're like, I don't get it.
Sure.
And when they see something that says desert blossom and they're like, there's no flower on this picture.
Right.
Like, is it hard? Like, is it hard to
So
hear
I
that
think,
person in the background?
Artists, especially like being a professional artist, so doing this full time business wise, I think artists need to be prepared for all of those questions, which I am. And I describe those in either like a blog or a page dedicated to those pieces. But as far as commissions go, I always have a battery of questions ready to go. And I even have like a form to fill out like for the commissions, like right from the get go. So I'm kind of prepared for all of those. Again, it kind of comes down to if they wanted something realistic, I'm probably not your gal, but I can recommend a few other local artists. But if it's definitely abstract, mixed media, yes, I'm happy to chat about what can be done and what they're kind of looking for. Usually it's like an aesthetic or definitely colors, certain textures. And abstract work is more compositional, so kind of like the flow of everything. Whereas realism, it kind of usually goes off of like a picture and it's kind of spiced up, jazzed up a little bit. But
do people really want a lot of realism? I can't imagine that that's
I
popular
think
right now,
of people,
right?
A lot
Just
of people
take a picture.
like it.
You know, you can take a very artistic photo of whatever you're thinking of.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's a spectrum for both. Like I've seen disrupted realism, where it's kind of like it's a portrait, you can tell, but it's definitely the colors are swapped out for different cool colors. And yeah, there are a ton of fun things to do. But yeah, I try to stick to this one for right now.
Is there something that you haven't done mixed medium that you're looking forward to that you'd like to try at some point?
So I'm taking a class, an eco printing class at the Plains in 2 weeks. I'm very excited about that.
Ooh.
So I like the outdoors. I'm always like taking walks, going for runs. The outdoors really inspires my work quite a bit.
So in this eco printing class,
Yeah.
what are you hoping to walk away with afterwards?
Yeah. So learning how to like forage for materials and what materials I can actually use and how I can use those to make some kind of printed paper probably that I could collage with. I do a lot of collage.
My 4th grade teacher had a side hustle where she made paper.
That's great.
It was awesome.
That's
it was
really
amazing.
cool.
And so she made, like you could buy a set of like 15 greeting cards that she made, and no two are the same, right? Yeah. And her husband was in construction, specifically in concrete. And how interesting that the two of you are together, because his job is taking rock and water and turning it into cold, hard concrete. And you're taking all of these fibrous elements and making them into something that, wouldn't be the same. He wants the same sidewalk, every single space, and you want things that are totally different.
Right.
Have you ever heard of the Gnome Schoolhouse and what they're doing down there?
No.
So 2 women bought the schoolhouse in Nome, North Dakota, and it was dilapidated. I mean, there were raccoons living in it and birds, and it was water, and they changed it. And both of them had been big into fiber arts. So one of them spun her own threading and wool and stuff like that, like from like the basic materials.
Wow.
And they bought this machine from England that, they don't make these things anymore. Like modern textiles are not made the way that they used to make it, right?
Yeah.
So they bought this machine and it came over like in 10 chunks, and some old British guy put it together for them and then taught them how to use it.
This is so great.
And they both do like tufting, I think,
Okay.
like where
Yep.
you take it and you puff it out and then you push it back together and you tough it out and you push it back together and it becomes like a cute little looks like a little mouse or something like that. So they take this gamble and they buy the old Gnome Schoolhouse, and it's all about like these fibrous arts, and they host and it's a year old at this point, only like a year. And they host these weekend-long retreats for people who want to learn this. And it's quickly become the #1 spot on the planet for for people to come and take some of these classes in
Wow.
things that were commonplace 150 years ago,
Yes.
but very
Yes.
unheard of now.
Yes.
So cool, so awesome, to the point of where like they also now, Nome, by the way, has a population of like 60 people. So it's a small little town.
I didn't know it existed, and I've grown
Yeah.
up here.
And
I bet,
It's
I bet
just
the old machine and the old British man cost more than the schoolhouse itself.
Exactly.
Leaps and bounds.
I bet
by
the old
leaps
British
and
man
bounds.
himself cost more than the old.
And it's the type of thing that when you walk into the room, like they don't let the general public in there, but when you walk in there, there's like lines of thread like going all the way across. So like you can't stand up or your head would get like caught up and it would like spin all around you.
Wouldn't it be great if you could specify what kind of old British man came over? Like, could he have a Cockney accent?
Right.
Can he be?
Hey, dirty roll
Can he be a farmer or can he be from this area? I'm really hung up on this idea
you know,
of
it's like,
picking the old British man.
It's
just my favorite detail. Yeah.
But they took it a step further and they had all this green space around there. And so they bought some alpaca. And so now
that is
they
awesome.
shear the alpaca
Yes, and then they
take
use
it down there.
Yes.
It is
Like
so incredibly
old school
cool.
textile art.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they took the second and third floors of this building, and on one floor is a restaurant that's run by one of their daughters. I mean, seats like maybe 20 people. And then there's a hotel upstairs. And
Okay.
so people can spend the night, and it's so like we did a show there, my radio partner and I, last year, and it was just the coolest thing. And it's in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota.
This is reminding me of a place I just was at in Grand Forks yesterday. Which is they don't do textile art or anything, but we were there. I was there for a shoot, and then we were on the way back. And before we headed out, my coworker was like, "I want to
Please
check
don't
out."
tell me it's a Subway restaurant.
No.
Oh, thank
It's
God.
far better. He said it's called Ojada Records, and I want to check this place out. And I was like, okay. And so we get there, and it's a hot chili dog restaurant with brats and other sausages and burgers you can get. And then they also sell VHS tapes, CDs, comic books, old video games, sports equipment, sound equipment, and then things you'd find in a pawn shop. And then they had open seating and a stage for live music.
Wow.
And I said, this is my favorite business I've ever been to because just everything I like is in here.
That's amazing.
And yeah, so
Eclectic.
it's like businesses now have to be like, they can't just be one thing. They need to be multiple things at the same time.
Do you listen to anything when you're working? Like,
Yeah, music. Yep.
Like, give me some specifics here, Alicia.
You're not goats screaming.
No.
I mean, some
kind of
people think
assume
that's
music.
music. They can be like
Yeah.
old chanting style.
So my two favorite artists. So I've always loved Sting and like Sting and the Police.
Nice.
Like since I was in middle school. Yeah. Just
Got a
saw
great
him in
Sting story
concert in
for you.
Philly.
Oh,
Like third row. It was awesome. Yes. I could see the beads of sweat on his forehead. And Beck is like my high second. Yeah. Second favorite. And just the dabbling of like, Rolling Stones or whatever I feel like that day.
So you're saying if you, Sting, and Beck were on a sinking boat and you had to get rid of one of them, you would get rid of Beck.
I guess so.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. I hope he never hears
that's
that.
the right choice, right? And it's like, be like, I'm sorry, Beck. Sex Laws was great.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So Sting and Paul Simon toured together.
Yes, and I
years
went
ago.
to that.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I've seen him in concert like 3 or 4 times.
I went to that show, and it was at Madison Square Garden. So I went to it in New York, which of course, makes like Scarborough Yards like all the more, like, oh boy. Did Sting do that thing where he stopped like in the middle of the show and then howled at the moon that was just a light for like 4 minutes?
No, not in mine. I was at the St. Paul one.
So he did that when he was in New York, where there was just this big spot, and he's like finishing a song, he stops and just goes, "Aroo," and howls at this moon. And at first you're like, oh, look at this guy.
What song was it? Or it was just a mid song?
So it was after one of the duets he did with Paul Simon.
Okay.
So it wasn't after Bridge Over Troubled Water, you know,
Okay.
because that's the one that where
Yeah.
he's like
Wouldn't quite fit. Yeah.
isn't it? Did Paul Simon talk about how sexy Sting is too, like during your show?
Yeah, there were some comments like that.
Yeah.
It's been a few years.
It got to the point to me where it was uncomfortable. We're like, we get it. Sting is sexy. You don't need to keep reminding me, Paul Simon. Like, I get it. I can see
Right.
him.
We
like,
can see the black leather pants.
Right.
And tight black shirt. Yes.
It was just bizarre to watch him howl at this moon. So on the way out, I was with a buddy of mine, and we stopped at the merch shop, right? And one of the things you could get was this beanie that Sting made himself. And so
What?
there were only like 400 available.
Handmade?
Yeah. So it's like a winter beanie you can get.
Like,
And
are you
it's-
saying like he knitted this?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, and he signs the like certificate of authenticity for it.
Wow.
And so my buddy's like, "Oh, let me see that like beanie up there." And
Gee,
so
I
they
wonder
give
which
it to
friend
him,
that
and
was.
then he hands over his credit card, and he gets it back, and they're like $700. Right?
Yeah,
Because
right.
and he's
Yeah.
like, "What was so expensive?" And I'm like, "The handmade hat by Sting. I
By Sting,
guarantee you
yeah.
that was the most expensive part, right?"
Right.
But he still has it, and he wears it from time to time. And whenever he wears a beanie, I'm like, "Hey, is that Sting beanie?" And he's like, "No, this is North Face."
Can I admit something? When I was a kid, I thought Sting and Billy Idol were the same person.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I can see that.
I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
can
you
see
see Sing 2
Of
that
course.
Sting has a
Yes.
roll in?
Yes.
So I saw a sneak.
Isn't it Bono? Are you thinking of Bono?
Oh, is it Bono?
Yeah,
it
it's
is Bono.
Bono.
It's Bono.
Yeah.
Funny thing,
Which,
when
yes,
JJ
U2's
was a
up there.
kid, he thought Sting and Bono were the same person.
Yeah. I actually for a long time I confused Sonny Bono and Bono
And
because like
Bono.
when you look at them they're like the same. You're like, what is the deal? No, Sting did the voice in something not too long ago. He lent his voice to something.
You're right, and I can't think of what
like
that
an animated
was.
movie, or
Or like a narration. He did something recently, and I remember people
Yeah, I
being
think
like,
you're right.
"You need to go see this. Sting is phenomenal."
Okay,
And so,
I have to look that
so
up.
yeah, so big Sting fan. Third row, that's impressive.
Mhm.
How long did you wait on Ticketmaster.com for that?
We got them right away, like probably 2 seconds.
Good
you know?
move.
Yeah.
Good move. By the way, this episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Ticket Broker, which is a website you can go on to sell tickets to shows you've already seen. So if you went and attended a great show, go to ticketbroker.com and sell someone your old ticket stub because somebody wants it. Ticketbroker.com. Back to our conversation. One of the interesting things to me about like what people listen to is I know people who say I can't listen to anything. Right? Like I can't have
Sure.
anything playing because I need to be in the moment and concentrating on what I'm doing. And then I know people are like my wife. My wife does dishes and won't listen to anything because she's like, "Oh, I'm doing the dishes and I'm thinking about my day." And that
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah. Kind of
And I was like,
meditating. Yeah.
That sounds like torture to me. Have something there. Even like just minutes ago, I was humming the song "Good King Wenceslas," like the Christmas Carol,
Wenceslas.
because because someone had said something on the street and it made me think of that, and I'm like, and I just always have to have like something in my mind. Did you find what?
it's going
yeah.
to be impossible to find out on IMDb because every time a song by Sting gets used in anything, he gets credited as a
Oh,
writer
it's just
on the
full of
soundtrack.
credits.
So he's got 405 credits just for soundtrack on IMDb as writer.
Good
so
for
Ah,
Sting. It's
okay.
Good for
luck.
Sting.
Yeah, I guess it's somewhere else. Good job, Billy Idol.
I like Billy Idol too, though. If I'm going to be honest,
I was
Like,
watching,
Do you think our generation likes Billy Idol a lot because he was featured in The Wedding Singer?
Exactly.
And
I was
that's
like
where we
thinking-
all know
everybody's
him
thinking
from.
that movie. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you ever collaborate with other people on a piece?
So I am working on that. I actually spent a whole day yesterday with Katie Miller, Katie Miller Ceramics.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So,
okay, yeah.
So we were experimenting. It made my head hurt because I don't know anything about ceramics. So it was like a deep dive into like ceramics 101 while I'm trying to translate my painting style onto a cup.
Okay.
So
Really?
It's awesome. Yeah. So we're just kind of seeing how things go, and we'll fire those couple of things we made yesterday, and
Nice.
very fun.
He showed up in Only Murders in the Building. That's where I was thinking of.
That.
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
I
Out
have
of
yet
nowhere.
to see that.
And
It's
apparently he was in
terrible of me.
Zoolander 2. Didn't see that
Most
one.
likely.
Oh,
for
and
like
he's in
5
Life's
seconds.
Too Short. God, he did a lot. Been doing a lot of stuff.
Do you ever do like a series of pieces, or is
Yes.
it so like? Has there been a most recent
Yes.
series for you?
So the Desert Botanical one was, I mean, it was only 5. It was a small series, but, and then the one I did before that was called Mindful Moments. So that's at the Choice Operations Building right now, until like mid-August. So that it's funny you ask that, because I think that's my next blog post, talking about how working in a series, why to do that, why artists do that. And a big reason is because it's more efficient, actually. You would think maybe it's the opposite. But yeah, back to your comment on Stephen King and how he only writes from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. So it's definitely a thing with creatives that they block their time, so they can only spend like a few hours typically like working on art, and then they got to switch gears. Like I can tell when I'm kind of gassing out and it's time for a break, so I'll try to like go eat lunch or go for a walk or go run an errand or something, or just do something totally different. So when I'm working on a series, so I've got several of them out on my table, and I'll kind of work on one and get it to a certain point where I feel like, okay, yeah, it's time to move on to another one. Let's see what I can do with this one, and kind of get them all to a point where, okay, I'm done for the day. Come back with fresh eyes tomorrow. It's a big thing to keep coming back to the works with fresh eyes, like repeatedly. So that's how I really maximize.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, like, do you ever like come back to something and be like, nope, like time to start over?
Earlier on, yes. I mean, so when I was done in the clinic, it felt very lonely at first, of course. I was surrounded by my team, and now I'm surrounded by myself. And
just you
my
and
husband's
Sting.
across the hall, but, I just had to like sit down and just do the work, where I'm just getting back to like sketching, figuring out what I like, what I don't like, playing with the watercolors, making swatches, trying different compositions, just stuff that I knew I wouldn't sell, but it had to be a starting point. Yeah, I made some crappy stuff. I've made crappy stuff. Every artist has to do it.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's sort of, it's like weightlifting, right? Like you don't start with 50-pound barbells.
Sure.
You got to start with the smaller ones so you can work your way up. And that doesn't mean you can't go back to those small barbells if you ever want one day, right? I think that the idea too that people are just churning it out over and over. Like hopefully you've never said like, I can't leave this booth until I have 9 pieces.
No, I don't work that way.
That's good.
There's definitely a need to value yourself, the artist, and like what your limitations are. You need to have boundaries with yourself. If something's not working, it's just a sign to like walk away and look at it a different time or try something different. Yeah.
What's the biggest canvas you've ever done? I mean, not like just like a canvas, but the biggest piece.
So 48 by 60 inches.
What?
Yeah. So it was really fun. So I bought 2 of those locally, and I just needed to like try working big, and it was actually a lot of fun.
We're in a kind of weird renaissance for murals right now. I live over by Bernie's, and Anna Johnson is doing a mural on the side of it.
I know
is
Anna.
Awesome. Like, so good. Not only just an awesome person, by the way. Like, of course, she caught my attention this last year during the election cycle.
Shout out to Anna.
Yeah. And like what she's doing on the side of Bernie's, I've lived in this house my entire life, and it has transformed that part of the street. It has changed the way it looks, the way it feels. We're in a building right now where on the side of it, someone restored an ad from like the 1920s for Sunnybrook, Kentucky Red Eye
whiskey. Says it's from Kentucky.
It's from Kentucky. And then there's a big empty blank space, which clearly was supposed to be like, you get it at Sheffield's or something. But like when you see that, it transforms it.
Yes.
Walking around downtown Fargo, everything from the angel wings outside Silver Linings to the Mario stuff.
Yes.
Even the small towns are saying like, we want to hire someone to come in and like do a mural in our town.
That'd be amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Would you? So you'd want to take on something like that?
I totally do that. Like team up with other artists and do that.
City Fargo's looking for something like that right now.
I haven't ventured that way yet, but yes. Yeah.
Put something on paper. Tell them like, listen, Mayor, I'll come over and do this. Let's take care of it.
That reminds me of high school art club. We had to go paint windows for local businesses, like Christmas themed things.
Really?
Yep. That was one of our like community things that we did. Yeah.
I mean,
that's fun.
really smart. Like, if I'm going to be honest, and then you get a chance, people see it. You ever see the movie Pleasantville?
Yes.
That's what he does. That's what gets Jeff Daniels all excited, like, because his favorite thing is to paint the Christmas windows.
Yep.
And then he starts painting other stuff. Then he paints naked Joan London on it, and they're all like Joan Allen, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And they run a cart through it.
Yes.
Yeah. Art.
You had said, obviously, you know, when your husband had said, hey, clearly this is not working out for you, you should do something else. After the shift got made, I mean, did your family notice a difference with you?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I mean, it's good, right? They noticed the change in you, and it was that, I'm sure I cried about it at some point too. Like, I'm just a crier. But yeah, it was just an affirmation. It was very affirming to have family say, I'm so glad for you. You clearly are so much more, just you're happier. You're like at a really good point and you're feeling better. I mean, I take blood pressure medication. I didn't feel like adding more to that. And that's kind of where I was headed. You know, there's genetics there too, but
I just got put on blood pressure medication. It's the first pill I've ever had to take in my entire life.
That's the only good news I get when I go to the doctor is how awesome my blood pressure. Everything else is bad.
For you.
Everything else is bad. So let's just not get too angry about it.
Here's a nurse practitioner question for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm supposed to take my very, very small blood pressure pill in the morning, and they say you take it on an empty stomach. So I take it on an empty stomach, and they said, like, but wait to eat because it needs to get absorbed into your blood or whatever.
Okay.
Like, how long do you have to wait?
Well, which medication is that?
I don't know. Like, I see. That's the thing. I didn't even know the name of it.
Oh,
they're really super small and they're pink. And
it feels more like a stomach medicine to me.
It's not.
But
So
it's
like,
not. Okay.
So it's for my blood pressure, and they're like, it just is absorbed better on an empty stomach, right? For whatever reason.
I mean, typically it's like a half hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been waiting an hour, and on mornings when I wake up late, it sucks because I'll take that at like 7:15. I'll be like, well, GD, now I can't have a banana until like almost lunch. Come on, man. And by banana, I mean a whole roll of Pillsbury orange Danish rolls.
Good for the blood pressure.
Yeah, right. It's real good. And there's the things like
salty lunch.
They're like, we need to get this under control, and I'm like, oh my god, like, is it that? And I spent a lot of time where I didn't go to the hospital because I was like, I don't feel bad. Nothing's wrong with me.
Yeah, it's a silent killer.
It really is. And like, I had a grandfather who died of a heart attack.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm like, so I probably should, like, if I make it to 52, I am the oldest living male on my dad's side of the family, like in that line by 52. So and I'm 38. Got to get that 14. I got a lot of stuff I got to do in 14 years. Got to get a live action Jetsons movie made. There's a lot of stuff I got to do. So, so I go in and they're telling me like, you have to start taking this pill. And it's the smallest little baby pill I've ever seen. So small that I don't put it in like my hand because it can get stuck between my fingers.
Okay.
And then I'll shove my palm to my mouth, and then I'll take a big gulp, and it'll still be in my hand. And I'll be like, it'd be like, oh, you little bastard. But it felt like the first thing I asked, like, what do I have to do to not take this anymore? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I don't want to take pills. And they're like, most of America takes blood pressure medication, so don't worry about it. And I'm like,
well, no,
that's not the answer I'm looking for.
That could be true, but they should be talking about lifestyle changes.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I don't feel like I eat anything that, like, I'm not eating 5 cheeseburgers. Unfortunately, my life is kind of chair-based. I host a radio show, and then I prep for it, and so it's me reading the paper.
Is the new smoking, quote unquote. I know.
So, and imagine if we could still smoke indoors. I could be sitting and smoking at the same time. And they're like, sitting and smoking, that's the witchcraft of the 20th century. Yeah.
And if your job is a cheeseburger taster, you're really screwed.
Be like, bring me, I'm going to finish this pack of Cools, and then you're going to bring me the latest and put extra bacon on these. Yeah.
Honey, I think you should quit your job as a nurse and pursue your lifelong dream of sitting while smoking and testing cheeseburgers.
You know, I've been thinking the same thing. I'm glad you agree.
You're just not a happy person if you don't have that in your life.
You know, Jim started testing buffalo wings a couple weeks ago, and he's the happiest he's ever been.
Yeah.
His funeral's tomorrow too, by the way.
Right.
You know, 3 boys, they keep you very busy.
Yes.
Which has got to be super fun. What's it like to be that outnumbered in your household, though?
Okay, yeah, going from 2 to 3 was a big shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the ages again? Just the
So 11, 7, and 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of a big jump and then a little jump after that.
Yep. And that jump had to do with like being in school and then waiting a little bit until I was like established in the, NP career. Yeah, what's it like? It's kind of full throttle saloon,
I believe it.
Yeah. Anything with wheels, we have it. And there have only been 2 lacerations, no fractures.
Oh, good.
Yet. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I'm the one, not Matt. I feel like I'm the one to be like, no, that's kind of dangerous. Like I'm more careful and watchful. And Matt will teach them how to do, whatever cool moves or like stand on one leg on my hand. Like did that when they were babies. Yeah. I love you, Matt. Yeah, it's just full tilt a lot of times, managing screen time. This is like modern day parenthood, screens and activity, having a balance there. Right now I'm like, get out of the house. It's nice outside. Go do something outside, keeping them busy with activities.
When I was a little kid, we had a lake place during the summer.
Yeah.
No reception for we had a small little tiny TV, no reception.
Yeah.
2 videotapes. So I'm either watching the Bad News Bears or the Barbie workout video that Jennifer Love Hewitt was in. And I'd already seen them. And I remember like going on and being like, I am so bored. And my mom and dad being like, you've got the woods back there to explore and make mischief in. You can go and you can why not become the best swimmer you possibly could be? You know, use your imagination and go for stuff like that.
Exactly.
And it's so hard because now you're competing with
every distraction ever.
Right. And all the knowledge in the world on an iPad.
Yep. Yeah. My oldest is like, Mom, can I get a phone? I'm like, why? So we got him a smartwatch, so we can get a hold of him. We can track him if we need to, and he can play music on there. And it's like such a dilemma for me. I know I'm not every mom out there, but yeah, it's just like I have an aunt and uncle who practice analog time with their kids. Like they work it into their structure, and I love that. So I just really try to hey, Gabe, do you want to play Trouble with me? The game, a board game, or just something non. I win.
I mean, that's an interesting pull for you to choose Trouble of all games, right?
It honestly, we have the game Mastermind. Did you ever play that?
Oh yeah.
My sister and I played that a lot growing up. I just it depends on kind of my bandwidth at that moment. I can pop the bubble in the middle and move the peg. I can count where the peg needs to go. Yeah.
We had a previous guest, Alex Davey, who designs board games, and he's talking about how Candyland is a course in predestiny, because by the time you decide who's going to go first, the game's over. It's decided. Because the card, there's no change in flipping the cards.
Yeah.
There's nothing that changes the outcome of that game at all. There's no dice roll. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So
it is all luck. Yeah.
You could just say, okay, Alicia, you're going to go first, and then just flip over all the cards and be like, Tucker wins. And not actually go through the motion of working your way through the peppermint forest and up through the chocolate lagoon or whatever. And it made me super depressed.
I know, that kind of
Was there ever a reason for the licorice vampire-y guy who was in the center of the board? Because I never ever saw a reason. You never interacted with him. He was just there, right?
Yeah.
I always wondered why we haven't come up with Veggie Land and it's all vegetables, because we live in this healthier lifestyle world,
right.
Look at it. It's Queen Carrot. Yeah, I gotta come with that. My favorite is from an artist that I really like online. I've never met the person, but they made John Candyland. So it's a Candyland board, but with all the John Candy characters.
I didn't know that existed.
Oh, the print is just It's huge. It's perfect. It's all these little like interpretations of what his characters from different movies look like.
Yes. Like
It
Uncle
is-
Buck. Is that on
Uncle
there?
Buck is one. Barf from Spaceballs. Chet Ripley from Summer Rental. I mean, it is.
Does it have him from
Perfect.
Home Alone?
It does.
Okay.
It, of course it
Okay.
does. Yeah. Gus Polanski.
Yeah.
Polinski.
Uh-huh.
Gus Polinski. Yeah. Big in Sheboygan.
Boygan.
And then like I'm such a pop culture nerd that I've also ordered prints that people have done. What I love is something that inspires you so much that you need to create something that like complements it. So I've got a couple like great Back to the Future prints where
Yep.
they do the same design but with like costume pieces from the first, second, and third, like back and forth. And it's just, I love the fact that there are some things out there that so many people see that they can't help but be completely inspired in that moment by that one thing. Imagine it's how I've actually never been to the Grand Canyon, but I imagine it's how people feel like when they witness the Grand Canyon for the first time.
It looks, I've been there when I was younger. It looks fake. It looks like a painting. Like you almost want to put your hand out like, am I going to like touch a screen or something? Like it's so vast and distant. It really looks fake.
They've got that, that invisible walk now. I could never do that. That's not me.
I don't think they had that when I visited last, and that was a while ago. But yeah, I don't know if I would walk
Take
out
your
on
boys.
That.
Be like, all right, run
it's
out
on
to the middle of the
bucket
canyon.
list. The national parks, yes.
My father-in-law is a major outdoors person. The type of guy who, like, if my mother-in-law were to pass, he wouldn't move like into Fargo because he would shrivel up and die. Like he needs to be outdoors all the time. And
Like, would he be like Ron Swanson and
Very
just live
much
off
so.
grid?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's
Meet
just like
tornado.
Ron. He's like, what'd you do yesterday, Pete? And he's like, well, I built this canoe. And be like, you built that canoe? Like, from what? And he goes, a log I found.
Yep.
His log looked like a canoe, and I turned it into the shape it needs to be.
Yep.
But I think to myself, I'm like, okay, so he loves being outside so much. I wonder if he's been to all the national parks because there's no time like the present to go and visit some of those things, especially as, we keep letting corporations do more and more to own chunks of them.
I know.
Right? So get your boys in the back of a
I know. We've just
old
been
Chrysler
like letting them get a
Cordova
little older.
Before
I'm
they
the one that
fill
loves
in the
hiking.
Grand Canyon and put a Walmart on it, Before that happens, that'll be an Amazon fulfillment center.
There'll be two Walmarts so that there's a good one and then the one you just need to go to make it. Alicia, so much fun having you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's tell people where they can go and check out some of your work, read your blog, commission a piece.
Yes. So my website, AliciaHauffStudio.com. All the info is there. News and press, my shop, everything. And I'm very active on Instagram, posting things that I'm working on all the time. And I'm just on the verge of going with Pinterest, like a business account and posting there too. Because I think things can linger on Pinterest a little bit longer. And it's actually more of a search engine than like, Instagram or Facebook is.
Right.
So yeah. So trying to get out there in different avenues. But those are the two ways to get in touch with me.
Spell Hauff for us, would you?
Hauff.
Hauff.
And if you check into the episode description in whatever podcast agent you're using, we'll have a link right there so you can
Fantastic.
Great.
click.
Awesome. Good to know you.
Yeah, good to know you. Thank you.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Veggieland is a horrible idea. I don't know why I pitched it. Let's just forget.